Hey guys, just want to give you some more information and some more background on some ecology terms we're going to be using a lot. Here we're going to focus on components of an ecosystem. So we need to start off with knowing what an ecosystem is. And we've already started looking at some examples, but these are all the living and non-living parts of the environment interacting with each other. Things like a desert, maybe a tundra, even the dirt on the bottom of your shoe would have living and non-living parts that are going to be interacting. We have three major types of ecosystems that we're going to be talking about in class. We've got terrestrial ecosystems. Remember with our affixes, that TERR, it's a reference to land or earth. So terrestrial ecosystems like a desert or a rainforest, those would all be terrestrial ecosystems that are on land. There are also marine ecosystems. These marine ecosystems, remember MAR is a reference to the ocean, and so these would be things like tide pools, coral reefs, deep hydrothermal vents, or the open ocean. And then 3, we've got aquatic. These are going to be freshwater systems. Rivers, streams, lakes, ponds would all be examples of aquatic ecosystems that have living things like fish and snails and turtles, but also non-living parts, maybe the rocks that are in there or the temperature and the depth of the water. All of those parts are going to interact to make different ecosystems. Well, we've got specific names for these living and non-living parts, and they are biotic and abiotic. Biotic factors, remember bio means life. You're going to be taking biology in high school. So these are all of the living components. These are going to be things like maybe there are some deer, maybe there are some fox in an area, or a certain type of cherry tree, or rose bushes. Those would all be living parts of that environment. If we've got a whole bunch of buffalo living in an area that are able to breed with each other, this is going to be a species. A species in just a certain area is considered a population. So all of the white-tailed deer in central Texas, that would be considered a population. Or the deer that live in Grand Canyon National Park, that would be considered a population. All of the salamanders, the blind salamanders that live in Edwards Aquifer, they would just be in one spot, and we would consider that a population. Well, we don't just find one species by itself. We might find, like we have in this picture, we might find prairie dogs, and a population of snakes, and a population of burrowing owls, and a population of different types of grasses and bison, and all of those living parts interacting with each other is called a community. And we represent these community relationships on a food web or a food chain. Again, looking at those different populations and how they're influencing each other. Well, that takes care of the living part, but remember that A means not. So abiotic, these are non-living components of an ecosystem. Apologies. Okay. And these can have a really big impact on the organisms that live there. They might include things like temperature. They might include things like the amount of rainfall, maybe the type of soil. Certain plants and animals could have to have a certain type of soil. So all of those would be examples of abiotic or non-living factors. And these non-living factors, they help make up the habitat. So things like shelter, space, water, these are all things that we need to survive, even us as humans. You guys might have your own room, you might have your own space within that, or maybe you have to share it with a sibling, and then we also have water, and we need all those to survive. And then we've also got food, which food is alive, so that of course is going to be a biotic component. So I want us to start thinking about this question: how do biotic and abiotic factors help an organism survive? And we just kind of talked about that with habitat. For example, we need abiotic factors. I can think of a fish right now. A fish needs water in order to survive. If it doesn't have enough water, it's not going to survive. If that water is too cold or too hot, it won't be able to reproduce, or it won't be able to survive as well. Another example of biotic factors, if we use that same fish, well, that fish needs to eat, and that food is going to be a biotic factor. So every organism relies on other living organisms as well as the environment that they're in order to survive. If we check down here on this prairie, we can see that these prairie dogs, they dig holes and tunnels and these huge elaborate communities within the ground. But if the ground was too compact, or maybe if the soil was too loose, those tunnels would collapse and those organisms would not be able to survive. So they need that abiotic factor of a certain type of soil in order to build their homes. Likewise, these burrowing owls not only rely on these other living organisms for food, but they also take over the prairie dogs' tunnels and caves after they've left, and they use them for their own home. So again, things not only interact with non-living components, but also there is a relationship between living things within an ecosystem. I hope that helps you out.